Hello, and welcome to the weekend worship service of the First Unitarian Church of Salt Lake City. I'm the Reverend Monica Dobbins. I'm the assistant minister of this congregation, and it is a joy to know that we are still gathering together to worship as one community despite our physical distance from one another. And it's a joy to know that some of you are joining us today for the very first time. And so I want to extend to you an extra special welcome. We want you to know that First Church is a vibrant and active community of faith, whether inside or outside our historic building on 13th East. And we want you to be a part of it. So please visit our website, slcuu.org, or find us on social media so you can learn more about how to be involved with our congregation. I invite you now to find a nice, comfortable place where you can worship with a full heart and a clear mind. And hear these words by the poet Wendell Berry. We clasp the hands of those that go before us and the hands of those who come after us. We enter the little circle of each other's arms and the larger circle of lovers whose hands are joined in a dance. And the larger circle of all creatures passing in and out of life who also move in a dance to a music so subtle and vast that no ear hears it except in fragments. Today we imagine ourselves as one connected community, reaching out to clasp one another's hands, if only virtually, and know ourselves to be held in this larger circle. May it be so for you. Once again, welcome to our service of worship.
Symbol of light, symbol of knowledge, symbol of warmth, symbol of freedom. We light this chalice as a symbol of our faith. Here we gather to celebrate hope and the infinite possibilities of love.
This time I'd like to make a few announcements about upcoming activities in our church life. First of all, our annual congregational meeting is Sunday, May 31st, starting at 11 o'clock. For many of you watching this video, that's today. We will be electing new board members and approving the annual budget for next year. It's super important stuff. So make sure brunch is ready early and that you've downloaded the annual meeting report from our website or from the email you received from our church office. Then just log into the usual coffee hour link that you can find on our website or on our Facebook page. And we'll see you at the meeting. Second announcement. If you haven't sent in your family photos for our virtual flower communion, which will be held on June 14th during worship, please do so no later than June 7th. That's just about a week from now. That way we'll have time to compile all the photos into a slideshow. So what we're asking for is a family photo, either outdoors or with flowers. And you just send those photos to me via email at rev.monicadobbins@gmail.com. And finally, next week we are going to have a rare treat and a new experience. Each year on the first Sunday in June, we are usually gathering for a very quick worship and then booking it downtown for the annual Pride Parade. Well, this year, of course, the Pride Parade has been postponed, but we're still gathering for worship together with the other UU congregations spread out across Utah. We will worship together as one big UU Utah family and hear about how our friends in faith across the state have supported the LGBTQ community in their church this year. But this is going to be a little different than the pre-recorded worship that we're all getting used to. This worship service will be live. It starts at 10 o'clock. You'll have a different Zoom link to use than the usual one we've been using. And in order to get everyone coordinated and ensure a secure experience for everyone, you'll be asked to register with your name and email address. This is a lot of new steps, so we encourage you to sign on early so you'll have time to get adjusted and work out any issues. We're really excited about this extraordinary opportunity, and we hope you are too. At this time, we encourage you to use your Givelify app to donate to our virtual plate. If you haven't used the Givelify app before, you'll see the information at the end of the service. This congregation, like all Unitarian Universalist congregations, is supported entirely by and depends upon the regular financial contributions of its members and friends, and we are deeply grateful for your intentional acts of generosity in giving. Thank you.
In today's worship service, we are considering the future of our church. Along with considering our future, we are celebrating our graduates. Under normal circumstances, I would have grabbed my mortarboard hat from my dad's basement as a prop for today. But nothing has been normal though, as we finish this school year. We are changing how we think through our rituals and traditions, how we celebrate and show love and support for one another. And so it is with graduation this year. In America, we celebrate graduation across our school ages. We have 4-year-olds graduating to kindergarten, kindergarten to first grade, elementary to middle school to high school to college, and college to life. These rituals ground us as we walk through seasons of change throughout our lives. Graduation, as it was explained to me when I graduated high school, isn't actually about you. It is about all of the people in your life celebrating who you are becoming and your hope for the future. In today's worship service, we are highlighting our high school seniors with our traditional bridging ceremony in an untraditional way. I am so proud of each and every one of them. The benefit of being in a community for a long time is that you get to see the children of that community from a very small age. I have been blessed to see them grow and change. I've helped wrangle them into Christmas pageant costumes. I've cried at their coming of age worship service, helped at bake sales, sat with them in good times and bad. This particular group of seniors are considerate and thoughtful. They are aching for change in this world. Thank you, seniors, for blessing our community. For all our graduates, big and small, we cannot wait to see how you change the future of our church.
Hear these words by the author Antoine de Saint-Exupéry. In a house which becomes a home, one hands down and another takes up the heritage of mind and heart, laughter and tears, musings and deeds. Love, like a carefully loaded ship, crosses the gulf between the generations. Therefore, we do not neglect the ceremonies of our passage. When we wed, when we die, and when we are blessed with a child. When we depart and when we return, when we plant and when we harvest. Let us bring up our children. It is not the place of some official to hand to them their heritage. If others impart to our children our knowledge and ideals, they will lose all of us that is wordless and full of wonder. Let us build memories in our children, lest they drag out joyless lives, lest they allow treasures to be lost because they have not been given the keys. We live not by things, but by the meanings of things. It is needful to transmit the passwords from generation to generation. On Meeting Sunday each year, our congregation honors those youth who have completed the track of religious education laid for them as infants, or when their families joined our church, and are now adults among us. Typically, these youth are also completing their grade school education at this time and moving on to work, college, or travel. It is a moment of tremendous pride for our community. They're our kids, and they are kids no longer. We have given them everything that we know how to give, and now we release them more than we ever have dared, to live their own lives, to learn to inhabit themselves, and inherit this world we are passing on to them. And what a world it is! A world gripped by pandemic. That alone feels unbearably heavy. This event will shape these young people's lives in ways we cannot yet imagine. And it is also a world filled with other ills too numerous to name. Climate change, state violence, materialism and racism and cynicism and greed, cars with low gas mileage and foods with high fructose corn syrup. It's a strange and terrible world into which we're sending these young people. But it's also a world with babies and puppies and roller coasters and vanilla lattes. It's a world with rainbow-striped flags and compostable cups and shareable playlists and apps that let you hang out with your friends even when you can't see them in person. It's a world with truth and trust, beauty and justice, freedom and mutuality. It's a beautiful and wonderful world into which we're sending these young people. So pray for them as they head off into the world and encounter all its beauty and terror. Know that we've given them tools for the journey, exposure to the great scriptures and religions of the world, the history and teachings of our own ancient and precious faith, information about their bodies and how to negotiate relationships so that they can love and be safely loved by others, experiences they've shared together, and the bonds of friendship. Pray that they may remember these tools when the time comes for their use, and that they may remember the beloved community wherein these tools were crafted. Seniors, it's up to you now. We've given you all we know how to give. It's up to you to go out into the world and change it for the better, according to the values and principles which we've taught you. You've learned the rules. Now, figure out which ones need to be preserved for future generations and which ones need to be broken to make way for a new way. Take chances and keep your heart open even if it gets broken. We need open-hearted people in this world. People with the courage to be vulnerable. People with the bravery to feel everything and transform your feelings into justice and love. And hey, don't be a stranger. You are a part of our community now and always. We want to see you, and we encourage you to join a local church as an adult member, either here in Salt Lake or wherever your feet find you this fall. You're never alone. We've got your backs. We love you, and we can't wait to see what you do next. May you be blessed.
It's a whole new world. And I'd like to extend my warmest congratulations to our recent graduates and invite them to help us figure out what this new world is going to look like. Graduation, almost by definition, graduation represents a real exciting time of transitioning from what has been to what may be. And we never know for sure what may be. Moving into the future is always marked with a degree of nervous uncertainty. And right now, everyone is looking at like a blank page, a clean slate. All we know is that life will be different. Human beings have always felt a little anxious about the future, going back at least 4,000 years to the oracle at Delphi. I sometimes wish I could just go out and consult an oracle. Don't you? Wouldn't that be great? Get a little beat on the future, kind of a head start learning about what's going to happen. Oh, that would be great. I think oracles back then functioned a bit like Siri does today. Always ready to give us information and sometimes helps us find our way when we're lost. But oracles, if truth be told, were a bit calculating. Oracles would change their predictions according to the amount of gold they received. A famous example took place at Delphi, where the oracle predicted war and doom, utter disaster for the Athenians. But then they did a curious thing. They offered a more handsome pot of money to the oracle, perhaps to change the prediction, and the Athenians all of a sudden were told that although there's going to be war, their navy, which comprised of just a few vessels, would actually save the day and life for them would be just fine. It seems that wealth and favorable predictions still go hand in hand. Like the top 1% today. Let's face it, their future looks a lot brighter than most people's. They tip the scales with their gold. Due to the pandemic, uncertainty is not reserved just for graduates. Aren't we all looking at uncertainty? Aren't we all graduating into a world that has been wiped clean of everything as we once knew it? And we're all wondering about next steps. Where do we go from here as these nefarious corona microbes have essentially shut down the whole planet? Now, I feel a great deal of sympathy for high school graduates. Not only have they lost out on a prom and the sensation of walking across the stage to have a well-deserved diploma pressed into their hands, but they have been isolated, terribly isolated, separated from friends and their whole peer group. And this has been going on for months and months. They are suffering from interminable boredom. I try to look at it this way. Family home evening might work out well every once in a while, even for Unitarian kids, but a relentless string of family home evenings is a test designed for everybody to fail. I wonder, along with everyone else, what's life going to be like when we finally get the clearance to take off our masks? What then? The first thing I'm going to do is lose the COVID 10 pounds gained through a spurt of continuous baking. And then, of course, there are all these elaborate new dishes that were prepared to add a little excitement to the day. And you never stop eating. You ever notice that? You never stop eating because you've got no place else to go. It's a disaster. Now, some folks in the restaurant business have been pretty creative. Since they can only reopen for in-dining with a minimal number of people for the sake of physical distancing, restaurant managers and some owners have placed mannequins at tables to give this feeling of a crowd. You're not dining alone. Hey, look around, this place is packed. And so I can't help but wonder if and when, I shouldn't say if, when our church gets to reopen under certain restrictions, forcing us to keep our numbers down, I wonder whether or not we should place mannequins strategically in the pews throughout the entire chapel. Now, although it would give the church a real nice feeling, full feeling, it might prove awkward, when it comes to that point in the service where we're asked to kind of turn around and greet our neighbors. Mannequins, not a real friendly bunch. And it's also going to be a little weird when it comes time for the collection. Mannequins are not known for their generosity, in case you haven't noticed. But we will figure it all out. What will be strange, though, upon returning to church is the feeling of going live. The immediacy of the experience crackling with excitement as opposed to me just talking to the wall. But the downside of returning to the chapel is being unable to say to the tech crew, "Cut! That's it! Do it again! It's over!" No mulligans allowed from the pulpit. I think those words ought to be immortalized. No mulligans allowed from the pulpit. So actually, I'm looking ahead to the future for our church that is post-COVID-19. The landscape will be altogether different. What role will our church play in writing new rules governing a new society? In other words, when society hits the reset button, where will we be? As a progressive voice in this valley, we need to rewrite the rules that will leave behind the dark hours and years that have neglected basic human rights for all, and take our nation on the road to a more just and successful society. It's interesting to note, historically, Unitarianism and Universalism has always served as a kind of corrective to society. When we were burdened by Calvinism's punitive God and doctrines of original sin, we offered stimulating ideals fresh from the revolutionary presses of the Enlightenment. Progressive ideals took root. In 1786, the Universalists won an extremely important court case that actually laid down the foundation for the separation between church and state. A couple of years later, 1790, the Universalists went officially on record in opposition to slavery. 1790. The Unitarians got their act together 35 years later. Universalist women were ordained in the 1860s, yet another example of a nudge towards fairness and equality. The UUA, the Unitarian Universalist Association, registered a fiery affirmation of same-sex marriage almost 50 years ago. And so we do serve as a corrective to society. Although we can be proud of our history, it merely sets the stage for what our expectations ought to be of ourselves going forward. When I was in high school, I had one line in a Kaufman and Hart comedy, one line in which I said, "We cannot rest on our laurels. Wasn't that dramatic? And I'm going to say that line again to you right now with a caveat. We cannot rest on our laurels. We have a promise to fulfill. As we look into the abyss of unconscionable inequality, reminded again just this week of 30 million hungry children in America today, we must strategize as to what will fill this chasm of societal disaster. Now, here's what I clearly believe are the issues we need to jump on in shaping a new society once we take off our masks. Mass unemployment, which also spells catastrophe for our system whereby healthcare is tied to jobs. So now universal healthcare must be adopted. And of course, we need to focus on more green jobs. I mean, the need to build an environmentally sustainable infrastructure remains paramount for our society now going forward. We need universal child care, universal sick leave. Yes, we're talking our tradition, universalism, where everyone will be saved. What an important concept universalism really presents. Because we don't play by universalism's rules where everyone can be saved, must be saved, will be saved. No, we segregate. We segregate our society in absolutely horrendous ways. So we must also work for a guaranteed income for everyone in society. Again, it's this universal concept where the blessings of life are available to everyone, not just the chosen or saved. The question we basically need to address asks, how do paradigm shifts actually occur? And the simple answer is when dominant beliefs about how the world works can no longer explain the injustices and inequities of what transpires right before our very eyes. In this expected sea change of values and systems that await our guiding hand, our church must ask, fundamentally, what is possible? Now, and this represents our work right now. This represents our spiritual focus. What is possible now that revelations during the virus have exposed cruel indifference to poverty, race, and suffering? How will this sudden revelation impact our religious movement? Where we once supplied correctives in the past, what can we do now? Change that. What must we do now to serve our values authentically? We need to grab hold, I think, of our liberal roots, which, as the name implies, liberal, meaning liberation. What contributions can a liberating church make to the larger society? Now, again, historically, we have reaffirmed democracy in the face of totalitarianism and McCarthyism. We cannot sit on our laurels. The need for us to liberate our nation from the wreckage of democracy sustained over the last 4 years is paramount to our very existence, our reason for being. Our tradition has aligned religion with justice in order to end racism, sexism, and war. Our broken society today aches for our moral resolve to bring justice to these times when the pandemic has exposed extraordinary hardships. Historically, we have served as proponents of pluralism. Where are we today? You know, when the president of our UU seminary in Berkeley, Rosemary Bray McNatt, spoke to our congregation a few years ago, she told me that she was utterly perplexed about the future of our denomination. I mean, here she was, head of the seminary, preparing ministers to serve an agenda of anti-racism, multiculturalism, but the churches, she said, the churches weren't ready for that. The students were light years ahead of the congregation. And so this remains a huge question our congregation must face for its future. Are we truly committed to diversity and multiculturalism, not rhetorically, but as a liberal church, a liberating church ready to fulfill its promise? And finally, we need to ask, are we ready to lead people to the promised land? Former UUA President Bill Schultz once said that all religion is a variation of the Jewish metaphor that everywhere we are in Egypt, that there is a promised land, but the way to get there is always through the wilderness. So are we ready to discover new portents of possibility? Our society today aches to be corrected. We are a liberating church, offering the moral mandates to apply justice to everyone. Again, no one is saved until we are all saved. That has always been the promise of our tradition. Our task now is to fulfill that promise. Amen. In closing, I want to remind everyone that when you come right down to it, our religious challenge is the same as it always has been: to speak the common truth that makes us all human, to liberate the communities that have suffered so that everyone may receive the blessings of life, to teach that our loyalty is not to a nation or tribe or corporation or lifestyle, but to that which transcends them all, the interdependent web of all existence, where we cooperate and collaborate with one another, where no strangers need be enemies, and that we, all of us, are responsible for our planet and its future. So be it.